Very good. Very good. Well, this is part 2. Of Rukmini's marriage. And just a little review. Yesterday, part 1, we began with a review of the Muchukunda story. And the evening before was the whole Muchukunda story. But after Muchukunda burnt to ashes Kalyavana, and Muchukunda's prayers were offered and so forth, Muchukunda went to Badrikashram in the Himalayas to purify himself from the activities during the time that he was king that caused bondage for him. And Krishna said, in your next life, you'll take birth as a elevated Brahmana and you'll come to me. He was on hold. And then Krishna went back to the battlefield. And when Krishna went back to the battlefield, he and Balaram destroyed the rest of Kalyavana's army, which was 3 million soldiers. And then they began gathering the valuables from the soldiers to put them in bullock carts to take to Dwarka. While they were in the middle of that, Jarasandha came with his army, 23 Akshohini divisions. And Krishna said to Balaram, we better leave the battlefield. So once again, second time, Krishna ran from the battlefield. They ran in the southerly direction to a very tall mountain, a mountain you've never seen that tall before. 11 yojanas tall. And 1 yojana is 8 miles. So it's a really tall mountain that we've never seen before. And Jarasandha couldn't find them. He thought they were afraid. He looked in caves, couldn't find them anywhere. And so he set firewood all around the mountain and lit the mountain on fire. Krishna and Balaram jumped from the top of the mountain. Celestial chariots arrived, according to Vishnu Purana, and whisked them away to Dwarka, and now they're situated in Dwarka. While situated in Dwarka, first Balaram married Revati, and that's not discussed in the 10th canto, it's discussed in the 9th canto. And then next, Krishna was to marry Rukmini. That's why he left Mathura the way that he left in such a hurry, because Rukmini was in a difficult situation. So we heard yesterday evening that difficult situation was having heard about Krishna, just like we've heard about Krishna. But she is the goddess of fortune. So the pastime of her wishing to be again with Krishna was stirred by Narada and other sages visiting the kingdom of King Bhishmaka, speaking to her about Krishna, and she became completely attached to Krishna. And that was fine, except there was an obstacle. And the obstacle was the eldest of the 5 brothers, who were sons of Bhishmaka. He had a different idea. And his different idea was that his younger sister, Rukmini, should marry Shishupal. For 2 reasons. He had a friendship with Shishupal, and the other reason was he was envious of Krishna, like really envious of Krishna, very envious of Krishna. And so he wasn't thinking of what his sister's interest is or her well-being or anything like that. He was playing I'm the elder brother role. And the father, King Bhishmaka, didn't want to make turmoil in the family, and so against his will, because he also wanted Rukmini to marry Krishna. So he just didn't get in the way, didn't make a family turmoil thing. And Rukmini was making all the arrangements, inviting all the kings and all of thises and that's, and a big festival, and the wedding was going to happen real soon. So there was Rukmini in anxiety about, there's no way I'm going to marry Shishupal. And so she decided to become very bold. And she did what a bold princess knows how to do. She not only said, come take me away, but she also gave a plan how to take her away. She's a Kshatriya lady. She's very gentle. She was a Kshatriya lady. And she gave exact indication to Krishna what to do. And the indication we heard yesterday, we read her letter. We're going to hear her letter again today because it's a nice letter. In our royal family, there's a tradition. The princess to be married leaves the capital, goes outside the city wall, goes to the temple of the family deity. The name of Durga, in this case, was Girija. So when I go there, that's when you can come grab me. You can kidnap me. And be ready for battle, because there's all these other people, kings and so forth, ready to, expecting you to do something, and you'll have a big battle. So be ready. And there was other things. We'll hear the other things in a letter. So she sent a messenger. The messenger somehow got very quickly to Dwaraka. Krishna received him very, very, very nicely, massaged his feet and let him rest and so forth and so on. Inquired from him his purpose in coming. He explained his purpose. He read the letter. Krishna confirmed, yes, I have attraction for Rukmini, as she's heard about me, I've heard about her, and I wish to have her as my wife, my queen, his first queen. And I'll go at once. So the messenger went back, and he hasn't arrived yet, when we ended yesterday. But now we're going to hear her letter. Let's go back. There's some nice graphics here. There's the graphic, this transition. Okay. Rukmini was a king's daughter, courageous and bold. And furthermore, she would rather die than lose Krishna. She wrote that in her letter. Considering all this, she wrote a frank, explicit letter. Now, it's not a really long one, but it's really, really explicit and very bold. So then yesterday, we'll continue again today. There are elements in the story that are points of application for us. She had opposition. Sometimes we have opposition. And she had a very clear sense of her identity as meant for Krishna. And she wasn't going to be swayed. Of course, that may show up in romance, but it may be in other circumstances of life besides those, where we have a very clear idea of our sense of purpose. We talked about sense of purpose yesterday. What's our higher purpose? And she was very determined. So here's another nice painting of Rukmini using a peacock feather pen to write her letter to Krishna. O beauty of the worlds, having heard of your qualities, which enter the ears of those who hear and remove their bodily distress, having also heard of your beauty, which fulfills all visual desires of those who see, I have fixed my shameless mind upon you, O Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, her mood, I will express the feelings of my heart to you. After you have heard this, you may accept me or neglect me, favor me or reject me. Nevertheless, depending on whether I obtain you or not, I will either live happily forevermore or else die this very day or the next. For one, in my condition, there is no question of fear or shame. Therefore, I now speak. That's a pretty strong introductory sentence she wrote in her letter. Time was running short. So she's making a request, and the request with respect means the other person, when you're making a request, you're ready that they can say no as well as they can say yes. And that's her position. Oh, Achyuta, your beauty and qualities are the two causes of my mind's becoming shameless. And my two ears are also its cause. Therefore, both you and I are at fault. It's his qualities and his beauty in my ears. So you're at fault and my ears are at fault. Therefore, you cannot criticize me and I cannot criticize you. So she's considering what Krishna might say. Oh, other men have attractive forms and qualities. So why do you find fault with them? Please do not speak like this. Then she mentions Krishna's unique qualities. It was very specific, which qualities. Having entered the ears of attentive young women, your wonderful qualities completely destroy all their pains, both subtle and gross. Tell me, what other man exists who has qualities like you? O Mukunda, you are equal only to yourself in lineage, character, beauty, knowledge, youthfulness, wealth, and influence. The painting is a painting of Krishna in Dwarka, and even Krishna was stunned by his beauty when he saw his reflection in the marble floor. It was wow. Oh, lion among men. See, Balaram's holding the tusk of Kuvalyapida while Krishna's smashing Kamsa. You delight the minds of all mankind. There's the people in the gallery up there watching the wrestling arena. They look very happy. What aristocratic, sober-minded, and marriageable girl of a good family would not choose you as her husband when the proper time has come? Therefore, my dear Lord, I have chosen you as my husband, and I surrender myself to you. Please, come swiftly, O Mighty One, and make me your wife. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, let Shishupal never touch the hero's portion of like a jackal stealing the property of a lion. No way am I going to marry Shishupal. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks, those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer. So Krishna did come, and right in the nick of time. If I have sufficiently worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead by pious works, sacrifices, charity rituals and vows, and also by worshiping the demigods, brahmanas, and gurus, then may Gadagraja come and take my hand, and not Dhamagosha's son or anyone else. Gadagraja is one of Krishna's names, and Dhamagosha is the father of Shishupal. The families of Krishna and Shishupal are related. They're of the same Yadu clan, Yadu dynasty. Very different personality, though. The Acharyas comment as follows on this verse. Rukmini felt that no one could obtain Lord Krishna by the efforts of a single lifetime. Therefore, she earnestly pointed out the pious activities she had performed in that life and previous lives, hoping to convince Krishna to come. And she's very persuasive. For reflection time, what are some qualifications that get us entry into a university? Common ones. What are some qualifications that get us entry into a job? What are some qualifications that get us a worthy relationship in this world? There's qualifications to do everything. This is just reflection. Just reflect. Are we perhaps approaching our service relationships with Krishna in the same mood or method? What are some flaws in this method? In other words, the questioning is, you can build your material qualification. In the ascending process, you become more and more qualified, and you can have more and more facilities and positions, etc., in this world. But the spiritual qualification is different. The method is different. What is Krishna's relationship to us as spirit souls? And how much does this mean to us? We find from Rupa Goswami the teaching that the process is different. It's our eagerness, or stronger than eagerness. It's our greed to be in that relationship, leaving all things to the side. We spent some time yesterday speaking about Krishna had a purpose. When he left the battlefield against Jarasandha and went up the mountain and left the way that he left, there was a purpose. And the purpose, greater than the purpose of smashing Jarasandha, was the purpose of marrying Rukmini, because it's a Leela, and they're eternal associates, and she was in a difficult situation. So we also, if there's an eagerness to be in our relationship with Krishna, then we'll forego some things that you could say are distractions or detours, or keep you, at least make your progress a little slower, if not impede your progress. The message here is being focused on the goal of reaching and connecting with Krishna, connecting with our relationship with Krishna, and leaving other things to the side. You engage yourself with some things, but some things you just leave to the side. So the relationship with Krishna is that kind of eagerness. And deferring, I mean, later the defeat of Jarasandha was taken care of. And it was done in another very interesting way. Of course, Krishna's pastimes in all circumstances. But from Rukmini's position, she was qualified by her religious activities, but the main qualification was not the religious activities, but her eagerness to be in Krishna's association. That's a spiritual qualification. And how then do we become qualified to reconnect, revive, and retain that relationship? Once we're on a trajectory toward Krishna, it's really easy. It's too easy. It's very common to become complacent and not stay focused, not stay with the original purpose that we started off with because of involvement in worldly things. It's really easy. And, responsibly do your worldly things, do your duties nicely, and and pass life distracted from the goal. So Rukmini is not like that. There's a teaching, some of you know the Bhagavatam very well. In the Bhagavatam, there's a teaching given by Lord Brahma about the primary qualification to achieve Krishna. And the primary qualification to achieve Krishna is stay absorbed. Jiveta is the Sanskrit term that he uses. Stay absorbed, alive in your relationship with Krishna, and by so doing, you'll inherit the kingdom of God. Jiveta. Nice photograph, huh? Krishna's image in the reflection of the eye. So, take thought. It says here, note down the qualities that Rukmini is exemplifying. And she has her challenges, as do we. What are some of the challenges that block us to proceed with our life that's very, very focused on achieving Krishna's association? In her case, the obstacle is her brother. And behind her brother, all the other kings and other people that want what her brother wants. And so they're ready with their armies and their whole thing to see what Rukmini wants happens. So she, in her letter, gives a very interesting plan. At the upcoming wedding, you should first enter the city unseen, without troops, but once having entered the city, you should surround yourself with your military commanders to show your strength. Very strategic. And if you don't do this, then it will be difficult to enter the city quickly, for the troops will accost you outside the city. So now, Prabhupada writes in his Krishna book about this particular kind of marriage. According to Vedic convention, there's 8 kinds of marriage. This is not really a sannyasi and brahmachari subject, but in Kshatriya affairs, this is topmost, where the parents of the bride and the bridegroom arrange the marriage date. Then, in royal style, the bridegroom goes to the house of the bride, and in the presence of the brahmanas, priests, and relatives, the bride is given in charity to the bridegroom. But there's this Gandharva or Rakshasa marriage, That's what Rukmini is proposing. And it's also very noble and honorable. Now, in our Western culture, it doesn't sound right, but in Vedic culture, amongst kings, it's noble. That's exactly what Krishna said to Balaram when Arjuna took Subhadra away. So this is very good. Next, after entering the city, however, you can say that you have come to see the splendor of my marriage ceremony, and then the army will have no reason to fight with you. Very clever. I mean, she's not a king. She's a princess. But she has the savvy of ministry. So there's a drawing made to indicate the city where King Bhishmaka resided. Then you can whisk me away at your leisure. If they suspect an undesirable turn of events and start fighting with you, however, you should show your heroism. Then you should forcefully kidnap me, the reward for your show of strength. Good plan. It worked. Since I will be staying within the inner chambers of the palace, you may wonder, how can I carry you away without killing some of your relatives? Your relatives in this case means her relatives. But I shall tell you a way. There's a grand procession in honor of the royal family's deity. And in the procession, the new bride goes outside the city to visit goddess Girija. You can kidnap me from there. Krishna said to the Brahmana. So he read the letter. He was asked, what was your purpose? He explained the purpose, then he read the letter. My dear Brahmana, I am very glad to hear that Rukmini is eager to marry me, since I am also eager to get her hand. My mind is always absorbed in thoughts of the daughter of Bhishmaka, and sometimes I cannot sleep at night because I'm thinking of her. Within the personality of Godhead is everything. So all varieties of motion are within the personality of Godhead. And I was just reading today a nice description given in Padyavali, verses quoted by Rupa Goswami, of how Radha is thinking of Krishna and how Krishna is thinking of Radha. This isn't, and it's the technical description is Purvarag. It's the anticipation of meeting when they haven't met yet. Their first meeting was when Radha was first born. Krishna came to the crib, saw Radha. Radha opened her eyes for the first time. We know that nice pastime. After that, there's no indication of Radha and Krishna seeing each other. But she gives a description in Padyavali, author unknown, what her feelings are. When she sees the black of mascara, in her mind she sees a form of Krishna. When there's a fragrance carried by the breeze, it reminds her of sweet fragrance. It reminds her of Krishna. In her mind she sees this blackish form, and so forth. Just with everything, every sensual connection, the eyes, the ears, she hears the sound of flute. In her mind appears this form of Krishna. although she hasn't even seen him other than when she was a newborn infant. And then there's another where Krishna hasn't seen Radha, but there are the different stimuli that bring him to the point of feeling the eagerness to meet Radha, but he can't. So it says he goes to a grove, holds his head down, and sighs very deeply. Very sweet verse. 2 companion verses. So these are moods of love between lover and beloved that may sound like or may resemble what worldly people may go through, but it's the other way around. Worldly people go through something that is just a dim reflection of this. So this is bearing in mind, just like we mentioned yesterday, Narayan has his consort Lakshmi, Ram has his consort Sita, and Rukmini is the goddess of fortune. And so they have an eternal relationship, and they haven't even met yet. He heard about her, she heard about him. They gave their hearts to one another, like a worldly love story, but it's not. It's ecstatic emotions of the personality of Godhead and his eternal Shakti, Swarup Shakti. Very sweet, especially with that understanding. And Krishna said to the Brahmana, I know of her brother Rukmini's opposition to my marrying her. Therefore, I must kidnap her after crushing all the low-class kings, just as one might generate fire from wood by friction. So it was a yes. Krishna immediately set out for Vidarbha, which he reached after one night's travel. So presumably the Brahmana came from the morning, reached Dwarka, and Krishna got back to Dwarka around the same time the Brahmana did. They made a night journey. Out of attachment to his son, even against his own desire, King Bhishmaka succumbed to the sway of Rukmini. He made elaborate arrangements and received all guests with due respects. Shishupal's supporters, big wedding party list, Shalva, Jarasandha, Dantavakra, and Vidurata all came, along with Paundraka and thousands of other kings. So Krishna has to deal with each of these in the course of his pastimes. If Krishna comes here with Balaram and the other Yadus to steal the bride, we shall band together and fight him. Thus those envious kings went to the wedding with their entire armies and a full complement of military conveyances. The plot thickens. The lovely daughter of Bhishmaka anxiously awaited the arrival of Krishna, but when she did not see the Brahmana return, she thought as follows. Oh, hope against hope, just as we find in Nectar of Devotion. Alas, my wedding is to take place when the night ends. How unlucky I am. Oh, lotus-eyed Krishna does not come. Perhaps the faultless Lord, even while preparing to come here, saw something contemptible in me. As she thought in this way, she closed her tear-filled eyes, remembering that there was still time. Now the curtain opens. a very beautiful painting. Just then, the purest of learned brahmanas, following Krishna's order, came to see the divine princess Rukmini in the inner chambers of the palace. He had privileges because inner chambers is only where ladies go, so he somehow was allowed in. The Brahmana then announced Krishna's arrival. Somehow the Brahmana got there as quickly as Krishna did. Doesn't say how that happened. There was a question yesterday, what's the distance between Bhishmaka's kingdom and Dwaraka? We don't know. I don't know. Princess Vidarbhi was overjoyed to learn of Krishna's arrival. Not finding anything at hand suitable to offer to the Brahmana, she simply bowed down to him. Now, this is part of Vedic culture. Again and again and again we hear in Ramayana and in the Bhagavatam, when a messenger comes with some good news or does some menial, humble service, it's just a culture that one who's on the receiving end gives something. We spent a whole lot of time on the topic of gratitude. Krita is a Sanskrit word for favor. And kritagya is one who recognizes a favor that's done, or gratitude. And there's another suffix, kritagha, that means ungrateful. There's some nice verses in Ramayana. I'll just go there for a bit. When Hanuman is leaping to go to Lanka, there are three experiences that slow him down. One is the first one that comes is favorable one. Mainaka. Mainaka is the name of a mountain. And Mainaka was approached by the ocean god, or Lord of the Sea, saying, I have received a favor from an ancestor of Lord Ram, King Sagara. King Sagara expanded the range of the ocean when the sons of Sagara were digging and searching for the missing horse. And then when Agastya was drying up the oceans, King Sagara filled the oceans again. So I am indebted. I received some favor, some service. So I'm indebted. I'd like to return that favor. And so could you help me, Mainaka? And Mainaka was very happy because Mainaka had also received some kindness from Hanuman's father, Vayu. This is all in Ramayana. And so there was a time when mountains had wings and they could fly, and Indra didn't like it, so he was chopping their wings with thunderbolts. So Vayu interceded and helped Mainaka become situated in the ocean. So Mainaka felt indebted to Vayu, and the sea god felt indebted to Sagara. So together, Mainaka rose to provide a little resting opportunity for Hanuman, saying, the essence of Sanatan Dharma is gratitude. Far out statement. In the activities of one who expresses gratitude like this, it's the essence of Sanatan Dharma. You can say the culture of Sanatan Dharma. The essence of Sanatan Dharma is, of course, service to Krishna, service to the personality of Godhead. But a cultural item is this one, the expressions of gratitude. And earlier, there's another teaching on gratitude that comes in Ramayana. Right within the story itself, there's lessons of life. As with this, there's lessons in life. When Sugriva fails to complete his promise. He made a promise, and he was remiss in fulfilling his promise. So Ram was disturbed and told Lakshman, go and find out, is he going to fulfill his promise? So, Lakshman's really intense, spirited personality. Lakshman went to Sugriva and said, even Lord Brahma said, there's atonement for all kinds of sins. There's atonement for killing of a brahmana. There's atonement for drinking liquor. There's atonement for breaking a vow. There's atonement for this. There's atonement for that. But there's no atonement for a person who's ungrateful. So very bad. And Rukmini wanted to be, she was feeling very grateful to the Brahmana. Mission accomplished. Somehow he got there. Somehow he got a yes answer. Krishna has come. She's very grateful. And she wants to, it's not a material, or it's a cultural gesture. And we should recognize the merit of what we have received from wherever we were, whatever our lives were before, what our lives are today. We received Lord Chaitanya's gift, we can say it that way, or the gift of the disciplic succession, the opportunity that what's the percentage of people in this world that don't have that sense of connection with Krishna? And what's the consequence of not having that sense of connection with Krishna? In the age of Kali, it gets darker and darker and darker. I just received something this morning from a devotee. He is quoting the 12th canto Bhagavatam of what's it like towards the end of Kali Yuga. Where people they'll be so harassed by the government, they'll flee and go live in the mountains. So over there was this description of someone reciting, because he was hearing firsthand reports that the people in Afghanistan, particularly the women, are so afraid for their own safety. There's places where there's agricultural opportunities in valleys they can't enter. So they're fleeing to the mountains in fear of the people with the guns. And the comment from the person who was sending this around is, so far it's only 5,000 out of 427,000 more years of the... So how far things have progressed to match what Kali Yuga is supposed to be like at the end. What's it going to be like? Is it... it's not getting better. For those who take shelter of the gift that's been given, our lives are different. But just a little, sharing. I grew up in upstate New York, in a little tiny place that no one has heard the name of. And when I went to college, I met Prabhupada. He came to the campus where I was attending school. And then there was a little center across the street from the university. And that's how my Krishna consciousness started. And like many others, like me, Prabhupada extended his compassion to people he didn't even know. This is what I felt when I was a college student. Here's an elderly, refined gentleman risking his life, literally, to come find people in obscure places like the place I was going to school and rescue me from that. Who knows what would have happened, and for that matter, any one of us. What would our life have looked like if it hadn't been for Krishna Bhakti? Some kind of material, whatever it is, but no shelter. So our lives as devotees is to recognize the gift that we've been given, and with gratitude in our hearts, give back to the person who we received from the value that we've received. And how can we possibly repay what we received? We can't. Anyway, gratitude is in the heart of a devotee. And it's a small part of the story, but in another sense, it's not a small part. She was on a chopping block. She wasn't like, in Afghanistan, in Kabul, having to run for her life. But, marrying Shishupal, or anything else that our lives situations may bring us to, and with facing the difficulties of this age of Kali, it's difficult, and it's not going to get easier. It's going to get more weird. It gets darker and darker and darker. Whew. Without shelter, it gets darker and darker and darker. There's just one more slide, so I'm just spending time. A little sharing of another story. Many years ago, many years ago, some 40 years ago, something like that, I had a friend whose father was a professor at the University of Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi. His father was a dual PhD in philosophy and PhD in religion. So this devotee arranged for us to go there and speak at both of his classes, the philosophy and religion class. And while I was there, I met another couple. The husband, they were Sri Vaishnava family, K.P. Sridharan, and his wife Bhama. I just have maintained a relationship with them for years. And their son, so he was a professor, his wife was a school teacher. And they had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And the boy was the older of the 2, and he was, if I remember correctly, he was 14, and he was graduating from high school at 14, and he was the valedictorian of his class, of the whole state. And I hadn't met him because I've been there a couple of times, because he was going away to school at a prep school. Residential school. So he came home when I was there, and he asked a question. It's related to this. His question was, how do I answer what my friends asked me in school? Why aren't you an agnostic? To us, it would seem you would be more honest if you were agnostic than to be a theist. Because the fact is, you don't know. So just be honest and say you don't know. Whether there's God or not, I don't know. But, still be moral, be, an agnostic moralist. Why is that not a more honest position than being a theist? And I didn't know how to answer. And I asked Mom and Dad. They said, ask Swamiji. So my answer was very simple. I said, when there's no, in practical terms, there is God because there is God. There just is. But the question is a practical question. So, in practical terms, if there's no point of reference, if there's no basis for what is right and wrong, what is to be done, what is not to be done, then what happens over time is the goalpost moves. because there's no point of reference. It's, vox populi. Whatever people say, that's what's to be done. So I gave an example. I said, I know somebody that's in charge of all the guidance departments of the public schools of the city of New York. Every one of them. They're over and overseeing it. And so they had a board of directors and a board of educators meeting one time, and they were having fun by saying 10 years ago what it took to get kicked out of a classroom and what it takes to get kicked out of a classroom today. That was like some number of years ago. So 10 years before, there were 3 things mentioned. If you talked out of turn, kicked out of the classroom. If you threw a spit wad, kicked out of the classroom. If you talked back to the teacher, kicked out of the classroom. And today, the standard for getting kicked out of the classroom is you carry a concealed weapon, you threaten the life of your teacher verbally, or you assault another student in the classroom, then you're thrown out of the class, sent to the principal. You got something? I can't hear you. Yeah, the teacher says, and you go, nah. That's talking back to the teacher. You're garbage. I don't, your ideas. I don't like your ideas. That kind of talking back. So, because the standards drift over time. So the agnostic moralist or virtue for an agnostic person has no standard. But the Vedic teaching is Dharmam hi sakshat bhagavat prinitam. It's given by Bhagavan. There is Bhagavan and there is a standard, and it doesn't drift as the modes of nature and time drift. It's the standards are standards. And we live by them. The way it's packaged may look a little different. Just like, the home that we're in right now and what it might have looked like for some family centuries ago. And, getting here by cars and using projectors. And so it's going to look a little different, but the principle is the same. And the standards by which we live. And so this is a nice teaching. This is all on the topic of gratitude. It's a principle. It's going to look a little different as time passes. The principle doesn't shift. The principles don't change. Here's the last slide. The next day, Rukmini leaves the city and goes to the temple of Girija, waiting expectantly for Krishna to come and whisk her away. It's a nice drama. It's a very wonderful way for the personality of Godhead and the goddess of fortune to marry, filled with charm and excitement. Sometimes Krishna creates obstacles for himself. Sometimes even he has Balaram, his direct personal expansion, to create obstacles so that in clever ways he can overcome the obstacles. He enjoys. So obstacle that might look like, that's a no-no. In Vaikuntha, there's no such obstacles. But in Krishna's pastime, there's obstacles that he creates by his internal potency, and he overcomes them. And he enjoys. And the devotees also enjoy. Yay, Krishna took Rukmini away. She didn't have to marry that awful Shishupal. Okay, so there's part 2. And tomorrow evening, we'll complete part 3. Rukmini's marriage with Krishna. And that's just queen number 1 out of 16,108. Lovely stories for all these queens that Krishna married, and there was some challenge, and he overcame the challenge. Any thoughts or reflections or comments? Yes. We have some online people, so we're going to give you that little portable microphone.
How did Krishna give equal attention to all of his wives?
No problem. He expanded himself into so many Krishnas. No problem. And he has all power. We don't. So for us, it's like, what? Even to find full satisfaction with any one person in our worldly dealings, there's always going to be some disappointment or expectations that aren't met and things like that. You know all that. You have a brother or sister?
Yes.
Are you going to be able to completely satisfy them in all circumstances at all times, or they can completely fulfill and satisfy your needs and concerns and interests in every time, in every circumstance? No way. But it's because our powers are limited and we're flawed. But Krishna's not limited nor flawed, and he can expand himself unlimitedly. Very convenient, huh? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
So Maharaj, all the people who created obstacles for Krishna, right, in Duryodhan or Shishupal or all the different kind of
in Vrindavan too.
Yeah. So were they like in a previous life or something? They had some qualifications, some devotees who were just playing part. And then what was their destination after the pastimes were done?
Well, some of these are eternal associates, like Jatila and Katila. There's an opposition factor, but it's for the pleasure of Krishna. They're not thinking, I want Krishna will like some pleasure if I make an obstacle for him. For the demons, largely they're demons. But when Krishna kills them, they get liberation. Canto 2, chapter 7, verse 34, read, gives a whole long list. Those killed by Krishna and Balaram and Arjuna and Krishna's direct associates, they get liberation. Now, there's different kinds of liberation, but liberation, it's a long story of which ones get which kind of liberation. But killed by Krishna, they get liberation. But who was Kamsa before he was Kamsa? Kalanemi. Who was Kalanemi killed by? Vishnu. He didn't get liberation. But when Krishna killed Kamsa, he got liberation. So when Krishna kills demons, they get liberation. Now, where they came from, different things. One source that gives the previous lives of different demons, if you're really interested in that topic, is Garga Samhita. With each encounter, there's a question by the king. Bahulashva is asking Narada, who were these people in their previous lives, like you're asking? And one by one, it gives the information who they were in their previous lives. And it's all kinds of different things. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes it's mixed. Sometimes it's just an accident happened, an unintentional mistake took place, and the person was then cursed to become a demon, then benedicted, you'll be delivered by Krishna, like that. So it's different situations where they came from before, and they're all get liberation of different kinds. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I wanted to share two things and then a question. One appreciation was your earlier slide. One of the first slide that I saw was time to reflect. About the qualities of Rukmini. One thing that struck for me was in her when she's waiting for Krishna, she says, "Oh, did he find something contemptible in me?" But she didn't wallow in that. She moved on to saying, "But there's still time." So
yes.
That was instructive for me.
Good.
The second thing was through the lens of being a Waldorf trained person, what I could see was there were three components in the way she acted. There was the thinking, feeling, willing component. There was intellect in that. There was definitely heart and emotions. And it just didn't stop there. She acted on all of those.
And they were all aligned.
They were all aligned. And so it was beautiful. And
very beautiful.
That was my second appreciation. The question was...
See the value of your Waldorf training. You can hear Krishna stories and get something from it that maybe the rest of us didn't get.
She's breaking stereotypes, right? Like of being a so-called demure lady, but she is.
She's sharp.
Yeah. So
and she's got a tough brother. A powerful guy. And Shishupal? And she's standing up to them. And she's got her intellect at work. How to do it in a way that's not going to harm any of my relatives. No, she's got all bases covered.
Right.
She's a sharp lady.
I love that.
I do too. I mean, Draupadi has that quality too.
Yeah.
Draupadi's, she's Draupadi. She can control 5 husbands, but she's sharp. She's powerful. Jayadratha. It's said later when they became king, she would move around the palace, and she was like the temple commander. She took care of this and took care of that, took care of the other. She is a powerful lady, but also very gentle. Very amazing personalities. Draupadi and this Rukmini. Very amazing. We're going to hear some more tomorrow about her qualities. Go ahead.
I'm trying to frame this question, but it was about the principles are principles and the details are different. You spoke about the standard in New York schools then and now and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So when do details become important? Like, for instance, just to give an example, like the principle may be to raise children with love, giving them this exposure to Krishna consciousness and, they choose what they choose. But then there are details when you bring them up, like, for instance, media usage or potentially ISKCON contentious issue like chocolate. There's some people who have it, some people don't have it. So when do those details become important? Like we want to... So my husband and I, this is like a constant thing between us, where do we draw the line? We want to bring them in a way that they're not, that they are happy in their upbringing and they don't feel like they're missing out something, but at the same time, we want to draw a line at a certain place. So
you have to do that. No, you're asking this. The parenting question has no end. The discussion on the parenting topic knows no end. He took care of it over here. The dial, he turned it down. Three things in simple. Each parent is different. Each child is different. And where the line is drawn is going to be different because of difference of parents and difference of children. And, you know, the most essential, this is, I'm not a parent, but I have many children. The most essential element is the relationship itself, where there's a sense of connection and safety in that relationship with the parent. And so if there's some drawing of lines, or beyond that, discipline, the understanding of the line drawing and or even further discipline is coming from a place of love, and it's nothing other than a place of love. But that comes first. This is something that came from Prabhupada, right? His instruction to teachers, but it's the same with parenting. When that sense of connection through love is there, then it's going to vary from parent to parent and child to child, but the fabric must be genuinely from the parent to the child, and the child recognizing from the parent is the relationship of love. I mean, that's ideal parenting. And then it's going to vary. And, you know, it goes on and on. Like, you know, for example, how much, if any, to what extent is there involvement with technology, children's games, technology games, or it's, you know, that's a big topic. Big, you know, there's no end to it. From what I've seen, there's no end to it. So if the relationship, back to the main theme, if the relationship is one of love, and that is the vital connection between a teacher and a student, or a parent and the child, or a guru and their disciple, and, you know, anyone that's had a state and they're dependent and the citizens of the state, those kinds of relationships, it must be you know, a fatherly, motherly like loving relationship. And then if there's some indication that says, here's a line, then it's accepted because of love. And then there's continuing, you know, recalibration or renegotiation or, you know, reevaluation, etc. So it's like getting your compass out and making sure you're heading in the right direction, kind of thing. Refinement of the course that this relationship is moving in, because the most important and vital thing is the loving relationship. So there has to be freedom, and that's part of love. And so then there are choices that are being made when there's freedom, but the choices are in alignment with that loving relationship. So I'm headed for the ditch, and someone taps me on the shoulder, a loving person taps me on the shoulder, I'm not going to bristle. Say, what are you doing? You know, I'm going to be understanding that tap on the shoulder is coming from a loving place. That's not easy, but that's the essence. Here we have from one of our young people. Can we pass the microphone over there?
Was Krishna or Vishnu worshipped back then?
Could you say it a little softer, please?
Was Krishna or Vishnu worshipped back then?
No. Narayana. Narayana was worshipped. Just like Nanda Maharaj's worshipable deity in their home, Narayana. Not Krishna. Now that's in Vrindavan, but out of Vrindavan, you know, Narayana. They didn't see Krishna with Vishnu. They saw Krishna however they saw Krishna. Different relationships with him. According to Rasa, they saw Krishna different ways. But they didn't worship Krishna. They honored him. They sat him on, exalted seats and so on. You've seen paintings, like when Krishna was at the Rajasuya Yagya, it was part of the Yagya. He is the most honored person. He sat on a big seat. But they weren't worshiping him as the personality of Godhead and offering arti. He was just honored. Because then Krishna would turn it around and he would, just do menial service. During Draupadi's wedding, you know what Krishna did? He was one of the bards that sang the glories of the Pandavas as the procession was moving. He liked being in the mood of the servant of his devotees. So they didn't worship him. Okay? Something else back here?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
You're on.
Yes, so this is slightly off the topic, but you briefly talked about the difficulties the people of Kali Yuga will face with a very pertinent example of what's happening in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So I can't help you but ask you this question that, as a devotee, we try to not read too much of mundane stuff or news because it distracts us, right?
Yes,
that
it
is the
certainly
general
does.
principle. But when something of such magnitude happens, it ends up sucking us, especially when the ramifications are on Bharatvarsha and Sanatan Dharma. So I worry. So how to deal with that? And then I also feel like Sanatan means which has no beginning or end. So I tell myself, well, these demons won't be able to stop Sanatan Dharma. So please help me. How should I comprehend this, and how should I be, pacified so it doesn't bother me so much? What is happening there?
Well, two things. That it bothers you is good. And then the other is how to not be bothered even if it bothers you, is you just follow Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva saw before it happened, and it was yikes. So someone today may read in the newspaper and go, yikes. But it doesn't get better, it gets worse. It goes in like waves, it rises and falls and so forth. But we do what Vyasadeva did. We immerse ourselves in Sat. And we propagate it. Because that's the antidote for at least slowing down the progress of the siege of Kali. Now, we're not powerful like Srila Prabhupada was powerful in propagating Bhagavad Dharma all over the world in a magnitude that was unprecedented. We're little people, so we can do our little part, and especially in the association of others who are similarly doing. This is something I understood 52 years ago. Whatever I can do to make a difference compared to what I can do in the association of others who are doing, so much more can be done by cooperating with others who are doing than whatever I can do on my own. Now, when one takes part in Sangha, there's defects in myself and there's defects in others. You bring those defective persons together and it seems to amplify the defects. And that's another Kali Yuga phenomena. So you and I and we need to go beyond the shortcomings and recognize the bhakti and amplify the bhakti. And by the bhakti process, overcome our own shortcomings and help others overcome their shortcomings. Especially that becomes possible and practical in the bhakti process. but don't expect there won't be shortcomings in myself that come out of, I don't know where that one came from. And in others, that I thought they were going to be way up there, and they're not way up there. We see anyway. So there's challenges. If you don't have association, there's less challenges. If you have association, there's still challenges. And the obstacle largely is the influence of Kali. So you've heard, I'm sure, Prabhupada speak. You read the newspaper, or in our case, you hear the news other than newspaper. And what do you find? And he gives a list of 6, 7 things, and it's always the same 6, 7 things. Different versions, and here's the latest. And it's all on the material platform, and it's the modes of nature fighting with other modes of nature, and groupism and thisism and thatism clashing. So what's the solution? So to make your mind peaceful, which was your question, take shelter of Sat and propagate Sat. A question came up in this morning's class of preaching, expanding the message of bhakti to others that has vitality and strength in it. So do it. Live it and do it, both. And that there's solace. I don't have to be a victim. I can be a messenger, an instrument of higher consciousness by my lifestyle, by the words I speak, the way that I speak the words I speak, the way I interact with others, the way I interact with material nature, and in a respectful manner, even people that are harsh, and walk the talk and talk the talk. That's shelter, that's strength. Okay, we have some two online questions. One more room question.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yeah.
Maharaj, I was contemplating about the statement when you made that gratitude is the essence of a relationship. And I was trying to reflect...
That is the essence of Sanatana Dharma.
Of Sanatana Dharma.
That's from Ramayana.
Correct. And I was trying to reflect that within my specific material context, within a corporate life, for example. How practical, are there any practical instances of where, does gratitude have a place in a transactionary, mercantile environment, basically? And
it's on a different level and a different standard, but sure, it has its place. It's a reflection of the essence, but it has its place. And conversely, we don't ignore gratitude in ordinary transactional dealings. Someone brings you a glass of water. Oh, thank you. There's the word, but there's also the feeling. Like, that was nice. They didn't have to do that, but they did that, so that was nice. Now, people may do those things just because that's their training. But that's okay, whether it's just their training, it's still coming from the place of being in service anyway. So gratitude has its place in transactional worldly dealings. The scale is different, the context is different. The essence is different because it's not yet on the spiritual platform, but it has its place in our holistic picture of life.
My observation has been that expression of the gratitude, like genuine gratitude, even within that environment, substantially transforms the environment, even within that environment.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
I just wanted to
Yes.
be appreciative of that.
100%. 100%. It's often overlooked. Go ahead.
First question is from Sucharita Mataji. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Should obstacles be treated as a means to grow, similar to obstacles faced by Krishna?
Sure.
Next
Easier said than done, but yes.
Mataji's follow-up comment is just to take some inspiration to face obstacles. Okay. So the second question is from Mahi Mataji. My question is, sometimes we express gratitude or favors to people around only to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
What should
Do
be
it anyways.
What should be our response in thoughts to overcome disappointment or anger?
Smile. It's all about your relationship with Krishna anyway. If someone wants to take advantage of you because you're Krishna conscious, be Krishna conscious anyway. Krishna will protect you. Don't worry. If you're keeping score on the material side, you're going to be fatigued at the end of the day. So operate on the spiritual platform. Your life is your relationship with Krishna, and act on that platform, and you'll be smiling inside and outside, even if people want to take advantage of you. You may take some measures to avoid an abusive type of relationship, but you're smiling inside and outside anyways. Anyway, easier said than done. Next.
This from Amara Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, sorry if it was answered earlier. I had a question about how Mother Rukmini knew that her desire to... Okay, sorry. I'll just read it as is. I had a question about how Mother Rukmini knew that her desire to marry Krishna was in line with Krishna's desire. She was so confident about marrying Krishna that she gave him directions on how to and when to take her away.
Well, she on the one hand, but on the other hand, she didn't, just as was pointed out in our conversation, she didn't know how he was going to respond. Maybe he sees something in me that's contemptible. So maybe he's going to say no. She didn't know. She's just being bold and very courageous. And so part of anticipating, well, Krishna may have some reservation because of such and such. So she's giving the strategy of how to overcome that thoughtfulness on Krishna's side, and to be successful. She's a smart lady. So that's part of what her message was. And it's not like Krishna needed her to tell her what to do, but that's the kind of person she was, and Krishna was appreciating the kind of person she was. And it went exactly according to her game plan. Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, you have something. One more.
Hare Krishna. I just had one quick idea that I thought of when I heard that question. Another thing that came to my mind is that, there's a great urgency in the timeline, right? So she might be worried that there's no chance of another reply or something, because the Brahmin can only run so fast, right?
Well, yes. Maybe he ran into a traffic jam. That's another possibility. Got a flat tire or something. But she did say, if the answer is no, then I'll just wait for as many lifetimes as it takes for you to say yes, because I've given my heart to you, and that's it. I'm yours. And now you can respond however you feel is appropriate to respond. My hand's off the steering wheel in terms of your decision. I'm not putting pressure on you to decide, but I'm dependent upon you. So kindly protect me. Okay. Prabhupada ki jai.